Hey everyone, RogueGold here, welcome back to the Division 2, and today, you're finally getting some Lexington builds out of me. Now look, I know I'm a bit late to the party on this, and because of that, I didn't just want to show you the meta build options to use with this gun. Everybody's already done that, and frankly, people have known what the meta builds are for a very long time now. So, when I thought about what sort of Lexington builds I did want to show here on the channel, I was thinking to myself, what would an interesting theme or angle to do this from be? And that's kind of when it struck me, right? The Lexington is a homage to this entire franchise, and specifically the legacy of the Division 1, so I thought why not try and make some Division 1 inspired builds. Now of course these ones that you were about to see do not function and play exactly one-to-one as they did in the Division 1, but there should definitely be some noticeable themes and ideas in both of these that harken back to the Division 1. So in this video I've got both a PvE and PvP loadout to show you, and I hope you enjoy. As we go through this, and certainly by the end of the video, I would very much love for you to head down to the comment section, let me know what builds you are running with the Lexington. It is such a good and universal gun that I'm sure there are going to be a variety of options that people are using, and yeah, I'd love to hear about them. But yeah, this should be a good time, and without further ado, let's go. Alright, beginning with the PvE side of things, I had two main thoughts when I was thinking of a PvE loadout that I could make with the Lexington, again, kind of within that Division 1 framework. How do I make this unique, and how do I make this strong? And this is what I came up with. Take a look.
You! Reinforcements incoming. Right there with you!
All right, and here is the build. Now, when I sat down and I thought about how I wanted to construct a PvE version of this kind of old school classic Lexington build, two thoughts came to my mind. Firstly, Striker is old school. It was among the first gear sets ever added to the Division franchise back in the Division 1. And I knew had I not presented a Striker build for this PvE version here, there would be comments of people saying, well, Striker is just better, you should use that. And I'm probably still going to get those comments for how I chose to set this up. But I thought, okay, I'll use Striker, but I don't just want to do like the meta version that everybody already knows what to use. How can I add a bit of interesting flavor to it? And that is how I landed on this, where we are using the Striker gear set, but we're also building into some self-sustain, which calls back to the classified version of Striker back from the Division 1. So again, in no way am I saying this is the absolute best PvE version of a Lexington build to run. This is just a fun way to set up Striker if you want a fun little solo build, play a bit differently than maybe you normally do. And as always, modifications are recommended. This is just a template for which you can take, make it your own, have fun with it. So to start off, of course, we have the Lexington as our primary, all the stats that it comes with. I rolled Flatline onto here because we're dealing with pulse damage for this build. Because of that, on the mods, I do have the link to laser pointer from the Technician specialization, along with the headshot damage optic, and then accuracy for the muzzle, and the extended mag, of course. Secondary and sidearm are totally up to you. Because I was not using another exotic, I opted to go with the Busy Little Bee, which I'm not using frequently, but when I do remember to swap to it, I get a bit of extra damage, so it's kind of nice. Moving on to the gear, let's start with the backpack, for which I'm using the Ninja Bike Exotic. This is another, callback to the Division 1, as this is where this piece originally started at. And so just keep in mind when we're looking at the other stuff that everything is going to have a +1 because of the talent here. On that note, we're using 3 pieces of the Striker gear set to get the 4-piece bonus in total, with weapon handling, rate of fire, and of course Striker's Gamble, which just gets you more weapon damage on hits. And even without the chest piece or the backpack, as you saw in the gameplay, this can still hit some very nice damage capabilities, especially if you're playing solo. All of this gameplay that you saw was on heroic difficulty. So yeah, it feels plenty fine to me, at least in combination with the other damage sources that we have. And as you might have noticed from my mods on the gun, I'm not actually leaning into crit on this build because none of these bonuses give us, or brain bonuses give us crit stuff. I decided to go for headshot damage. Of course, you don't have to do that. You could go for crit and that would probably do you just fine. Your values might just be a little bit low because you're trying to split between crit chance and crit damage. So I figured let's just go and do headshot damage, since that is a single stat that I can build. And if you're able to hit those shots, it works quite well. So I have headshot damage on everything. It's rolled here. I have a mod there. If we go to the Striker holster, headshot damage rolled there. Same thing on the knee pads. And the same applies to our other 2 pieces, which then provide some of that self-sustain that I was talking about. Let's look at the gloves first. I have the named 511 Death Grips. These come with 10% armor on kill. That is the only reason that I'm using this piece. So again, if you didn't want to lean as much into the self-sustain aspect of it, you could swap these out, do something else, totally up to you. But on here I've got armor. Of course, it comes with the armor on kill and headshot damage. And then finally for the chest piece, I have the Closer, which is the named Uzina piece with Ninja Bike. That's giving me 5% total armor and another 10% armor on kill. So it very much plays in that whole thing. And it comes with Perfect Spotter, which again lines up with what we're rolling our Lexington for with Flatline. And with Spotter, Flatline, and the Striker stacks, as you saw in the gameplay, that results in a lot of damage. And on here I've just got armor, headshot damage, weapon handling, and headshot damage mod. Now that we've looked at all of that, taking a peek at the gun itself, I have about 160% headshot damage, so anywhere around there, you should be dealing pretty good amounts of DPS. Once again, skills are up to you. I decided to throw on a fixer drone for a little bit of extra sustain because I'm getting 2 skill tiers from my gear pieces, and the 2 piece of the 511 gets me 30% incoming repair. It gets me, a slight bit of noticeable healing, but again, you could swap that out. Same thing with the decoy. I thought this would be nice, but use whatever you want there. Alright, now moving on to PvP. I had a lot of fun theory crafting for a PvP loadout with the Lexington, and frankly, there are a ton of different options. But I really tried to imagine how could I recapture the magic of the Division 1's PvP, right? Because obviously it plays quite differently to the Division 2's. Is it possible to really capture that essence in one build? I'll let you all be the judge, but this is what I came up with.
System activated. Curtailed.
Alright, so here is the build. Very happy with how this one came together. As I said, I really wanted to lean into the kind of self-sustain and healing aspect that the Division 1's PvP was very famously known for. But of course you have to have a good amount of damage to back that up, and I think that is exactly what this build came out to in total. So let's get right to it. On our Lexington, we have of course the roles it comes with, and Sadist as our weapon talent. We are dealing with bleed damage as our primary damage source, or not bleed damage, but a bleeding target, so that we deal extra damage to them, and that is exactly what Sadist promotes. We then have those mods: crit chance, crit damage, crit chance, and the extended mag. Sidearm and pistol, totally up to you. Moving on to the gear, let's start with Ridgeway's Pride as our exotic chest piece. This is kind of the centerpiece of the build. This is how we're applying the bleed. That's why this excels so much in those solo situations. Even if you're fighting 1v2, 1v3, if you can get the bleed applied to all of those targets, you can have an insane amount of self-sustain, as you can read from the talent there. So that's kind of the core philosophy that we're going for, and you'll see that on all the other pieces as well. So on here we've got the rolls that the Ridgeway's comes with and a crit chance mod. Let's then move on to the first piece of Golan, shall we? We got two pieces of this in total. That's giving us 10% status effects, which is nice for the bleed to last a little bit longer, and armor regen. Additionally, this is the Anarchist Cookbook named Golan backpack, and that comes with Perfectly Wicked, which is another source of damage where that every time we apply the bleed, it gives us Wicked, which is 18% additional weapon damage for 27 seconds. And yeah, not much to say. It stacks very well with how this all works. On here we have armor, crit damage, armor regen, and a crit chance mod. If you couldn't tell by now, yes, we are stacking armor regen alongside crit and overall damage. That is really the key to this build, is having a lot of sustain and a good amount of damage at the same time, and that is how you strike that perfect balance. Moving on to the glove, second piece of Golan, armor regen, and crit damage on there. Then for the knee pads, we have the Emperor's Guard, which is of course the Murakami piece that comes with 1% armor regen as its perfected attribute. Just trying to get as many of those percentages as possible, as that is how you get a high amount of armor regen in total. So on here we have armor and crit damage to back that up. Moving on to the holster, we have one piece of Bellstone, because this is the other brand that comes with 1% armor regen in the first slot. On here we have armor regen, and crit damage. And then lastly, we have one piece of Gila for the mask with the Chill Out. Now this one I would say is the most interchangeable piece. It is really up to you. If you wanted to go with more damage oriented, you could put something like Fenris here, or Seska, or Sombra, or Walker, like whatever you want really. But those would be my two recommendations. Either do a damage brain piece like that, or go with Gila for the extra 5% total armor. That will mean that your armor regen is getting more use, because you have more armor in total for it to draw from. So yeah, that last piece is really down to you if you want to lean more into survivability or damage. I went for survivability, but that, like I said, is totally up to you. On here, I've got armor, crit damage rolled, 2 crit chance mods. And if we take a look at our overall stats for the build, I'm rocking 50 crit chance, 130 crit damage. This will come down to 40 and 110 once we go into conflict and lose the shade watch stats. And again, considering how much we have invested into armor regen and survivability, I'm happy with those stats. I think that's a pretty good distribution. Speaking of, if we jump down here, then you can see I've got 73,000 armor regen. That'll go down a bit once you get into conflict, because you're losing the total armor from the watch. But as soon as you engage with one target, obviously with Ridgeway's Pride, you add 3% to that, so that's probably getting you over 100,000. Hit a second target, hit a third. That's when this becomes pretty insane, as you saw in some of those clips. And so yeah, all of this in total works really, really well. The last bits, the specialization in the skills, totally up to you. I went for an EMP sticky bomb, because that's really nice for the stagger up close, as well as the defender drone, because we're running a lot of armor. This can be nice just to survive a little bit longer. And then finally, we've got the firewall specialization, because of how good that medkit is in PvP. Additionally, that gets us the 15% crit damage grip mod that I've got on there. So I recommend firewall, but if you want to try something else, as always, go for it. And there you have it, folks. Those are two classic Lexington builds, if you will. I tried to be a bit unique and creative with this one compared to kind of, I don't know, your standard build video. So I hope you enjoyed, or at the very least found it informative. Not only would I love to hear your thoughts about the two builds that I presented in this video, but as mentioned at the start, I would love to get a sense of what kind of builds you guys have been constructing and running with the Lexington thus far. I'm sure across PvE and PvP there are a ton of different ideas that people have gone after. So yeah, if you're willing to share, I'd love to hear about them. If you enjoyed this video and you want to stay up to date on everything with the Division 2, including seeing future build videos, as well as stuff like news, guides, breakdowns, all of that, then I hope you will consider clicking that subscribe button if you're not already. We've got a vibrant and growing community here, and I would love for you to be a part of it. That is going to do it for me today, though, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. RogueGold. Ow.